Right, so this is your spreadsheet project, and we would have started it in class last week. You were told to create a workbook called Angel Care Spreadsheet. I hope that you have it because I did post in the group that we'll be working on it this morning. The next thing you are told to do is to create a sheet called Residence, which you started. Not sure if you finished entering the data, but I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing. I have the solution already. This is the solution. I'm just going to copy the most important part of the data. I have no telephone number and date of birth. That is not essential right now, but make sure that when you do yours, that you put in your date of birth, okay? So I'm going to copy the pieces that you would have entered from last week so that I don't waste time. And I'm going to paste it in a new sheet that I have. Notice I started in a row, I think it was row 6 or row 7. Row 6. And the reason for starting in row 6 is so that it gives me space to put in a heading and among other things. All right. So I'm going to notice that you find that some of the, can you see guys, some of the words in the cells, the data in the cells are going over into other columns or seemingly going over into other columns. When you see that happening, all you need to do is to open up the column. So for example, if you look at last name here, you cannot see the entire label. It's going over into column C. What you need to do to fix that, put your cursor between column B and C, and you will see the bidirectional arrow pointing to the left and the right. All you need to do once you see that arrow, double click and it will widen the column. Another way you can widen the column is to simply position. So you have to deselect the area that you're on now and go to the next area. So for next of kin and street, they are kind of joined. So the second method of widening the column is to position your cursor. We're not clicking it, but just position your cursor between the two columns, look for the bidirectional arrow and click and drag to your right to widen, right? And if you wanted to narrow the column, you would click and drag to your left. When you double click, it adjusts the column width to exactly what you need. So you notice here that I have some extra space on the right-hand side of these words. If I double click between the two columns, it will adjust it to fit just enough and give it just enough room to fit. Maybe a little bit of space to the side as well. So I'm going to adjust these columns as well so that you can see what I have. When you enter your data, the streets don't have to be correct, but they must be done in a format that is recognizable as a street. For example, you may have a number for the street, and if it's a lot number for a scheme, you say lot number, whatever, and the name of the scheme. The town and the parish must make sense. At least we can make those things make sense, right? And then, so after you put in the street, the town, and the parish, and you put in a telephone number. Remember I said I'm not putting in any date of birth and any telephone number because I don't need it, but you must make sure you put in yours, okay? Let's now continue with the instructions. It says, in an appropriate section of the spreadsheet, use an appropriate function to insert the current date. Now, there are different functions that we can use to enter the date. And this is not typically how I would teach functions, but we're just going to put it, I'm just going to show you the different things as we go along. And then anything else that I don't get a chance to teach you, I will teach you at the end, if it's not inside of the project, right? So I'm going to put the date in cell A4. And the function that I'm going to use to do that is the today function. Whenever we're typing a function or a formula in Excel, we always begin them with an equal sign. So I type the equal sign and I type today. You will notice when you have started typing the function that any function that starts with TO will appear in the list. In this case, it's only one, so today function. You can actually, instead of typing in the entire function, double click on the function and it will open a bracket for you. All you need to do is to close the bracket that is for this function and press enter. There are other functions that will take arguments inside of the values. This one in particular does not take any arguments inside of the brackets. So we just close the bracket and we press enter and it will put today's date. All right. Alternatively, you could have, and notice what I'm doing. If I want to move a value in a cell and put it somewhere else, I can click on the cell, put my mouse over the edge of the line. Once I see the four-way arrow, I click and drag to where I want it to go. And I can put the label date here, right? I can put the label date there. So this is the date entered. Remember, the function is the equal today, open bracket, close bracket, the today function to give us the date, today's date. All right. Next instruction says, on this sheet, you will record, hold on. Okay, on this sheet, you'll record the following for 10 residents. First name, last name, date of birth, gender, next of kin, address, street, town, parish, and telephone number, right? I don't know if you had gender there, but if you didn't have it, you'll have to put it in. Guys, do you have your spreadsheets open?
No, miss.
No?
I don't have a spreadsheet. I'm looking at yours.
All right, so because it is recording, you can always watch the video later on. I'm going to post it in the classroom and follow the instructions and do them. All right. So the next instruction says, so I have already entered this data for the 10 residents minus the telephone number and the date of birth. Cost for rooms are charged on a nightly basis. Create a sheet called rooms with the following. So what you're doing now, students, is you're creating an addition sheet in the same workbook. You're not going to start a new spreadsheet file. You're going to, we're told to rename the sheet as residence. So I'm going to right click on where it says sheet 1, right click and say rename, and I'm going to type residence. So we are told to add a new sheet called rooms. All I need to do is to click on the plus sign, which is the new sheet button, click on it, right click and rename it to rooms. So there it is. Now I'm going to I'm not going to type out the data for the rooms. I'm going to copy it exactly from here and paste it inside of Excel, because you can do that. So I'm going to right click on the table, I'm going to say copy, I'm going to go back to my spreadsheet that I was working on, and I'm going to start in row 6 as usual. I'm going to right click and I'm going to paste. When it pastes it, students, when it pastes it, it's not going to look as nice and neat. So you will have to do some adjustment. Otherwise, if you are afraid, if you're not so tech savvy and you're afraid to do the adjustments, just simply type in the data, right? Here's a lesson I want to teach you though. Whenever you see a cell having a lot of hashtags like this, especially if it's a cell that has numeric values, it simply means that the cell or the column that the cell is in is not wide enough. So you need to widen the column. And remember, there are two methods we can use to widen the column. We can put our cursor in between the end of the column and the next column and double click, or we can click and drag to the right to widen. I'm going to double click just to give it enough space. Now, if you notice, my description is in several lines. I don't want that, so I'm going to click and drag because it's not going to allow me to double click and give me enough space. Sorry. I'm going to narrow the column a little bit more. Don't need so much space. Sorry. I'm also going to adjust the height of the row. And I can adjust it the same way I adjust the width of the column. I put my cursor in between the two cells or the two rows, and I double click. And if I double click, you notice the row is adjusted accordingly. So this thing is saying I have 10 minutes. I will go for another 5 minutes and then I will end the session and then allow you to join back the meeting. All right. Now this one is not adjusting, and this one as well. So what I normally do is the default height of a cell or row, sorry, is 15.50. I'm going to just right click and select row height and type 15.50. Press enter and it will adjust. And I'm going to do the same thing again. Right click, row height, 15.50. Press enter. And the last one, right click, row height, type 15.50. Press enter. Oh, this one as well. You could adjust it, but sometimes it takes too much, a lot of dexterity to adjust it up and down. So it's easier to just right click and set the row height if it is not the default row height. And this is your data for your rooms. All right, so this is the data for the rooms. What I'm going to do, I'm going to end the session and you're going to rejoin the session by clicking on join meeting and re-entering the passcode.